Hey guys, this is Richard from Welsh Tech. Right, this is another video I'm going to do for you. This is what is the standard for memory these days. Now, back years ago, 8 gigs was the standard. Now, these days, when you can stream, you can, you record, you do editing, anything that utilizes memory will be a factor. The more memory you have, the better things will utilize it. Now, this is just something I've been focusing on because I run 16 gigs of RAM. Sometimes I run into limitations with editing videos with 16 gigs. Obviously, with like applications like video editing software, there obviously is going to utilize memory. It's going to utilize it for rendering as well as the editing part, as well as when you export it. It depends on what resolution you export it on, obviously. So this is just a video I thought, 10 years ago the standard was 8 gigs. I remember when it was the standard for 8 gigs for playing games and stuff like that. Now, but in 2020, so many streamers, so many gamers, so many vloggers on YouTube. Is 16 gigs enough these days? I've even run into limitations with playing now certain games. If they're CPU heavy bound, that will utilize memory more than what if it was just GPU bound, because if it's a graphical game, more than utilizing CPU cores, which most games these days do utilize CPU cores. They didn't back 10 years ago. No, 4 cores was enough back then, but these days the more cores you have, the better the gaming, the streaming and the editing experience you get. Now, what is the standard these days? I personally think it is 16, because by like 5 years ago, when like DDR4 came out, in DDR3 time, 8 gigs was enough. Definitely was enough. But now, since we are hitting CPU cores the size of Ryzen, like 12 cores with 24 threads, or if you go to Epic, which is a 64 core 128 thread monster. Yes, that is for server use, but the more memory you have, the faster it runs. Obviously with Ryzen, it utilizes megahertz more than memory speeds, memory capacity. The higher the memory frequency you go up, the better Ryzen will run. Intel tends to run on anything, but I've noticed a jump from 2666 to 3000 megahertz. I've definitely found a big jump in editing. Perhaps it's because when you edit videos, perhaps it's utilizing your RAM, your CPU, and some instances when you export your GPU, unless you don't let it utilize GPU performance to render. But lately I've been finding it a bit difficult. Some applications I'm running, especially one, Chrome, that one hogs RAM like crazy, which, if you believe it or not, 5 years ago it didn't, but now, oof, it wants every bit of RAM. But if you've seen the latest video from Linus Tech Tips, it doesn't matter how many tabs you get or utilize at one point. It doesn't matter if you have 2 terabytes of hard memory. When you start hitting, say, 5,000 tabs with Chrome, you do hit a CPU, maybe graphics or motherboard, or it's a mixture. It depends on what requirements are. Now, no one uses 2 terabytes of RAM unless it's a server use, but with that, it's usually 64 to 128 gigs of RAM. Usually it's not a terabyte or 1 terabyte. It's usually, if they have banks, like server racks full of servers, they usually have between 128 or 64 gigs of RAM in between. So by the time you add them all up, it gets up to like, you know, 2-3 terabytes. But you know, obviously a normal consumer like me or you isn't going to be utilizing two terabytes of RAM. Maybe definitely 2 terabytes of hard drive space or SSD space, that's for damn sure. But yeah, this is just a little video. I mean, I'm going to add a couple of things to it, but my personal experiences as well as my personal researching does indicate that 16 gigs is the standard for gaming. Yeah, they say it's the sweet spot these days, but it's becoming more frequent that 16 gigs is going to become the standard. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Richard from Welshie Tech. Please subscribe to the channel, like, dislike. Also, this is Welshie out.